What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the LA Soccer Up Show. We're coming to the final episodes here of the season. MLS Cup playoffs have been exciting. Eastern and Western Conference, man, they've delivered. Obviously, you know what happened with LAFC. We're gonna bring Justin. Justin, how you doing, man?
Doing well, man. Yeah, it's exciting getting down to the nitty-gritty here in the MLS playoffs. First round of that single elimination finished now, and now we only have conference final and MLS Cup. Three more games in this very long, it seemed, season, but it's finally coming to an end here. So savor those past or the last few games.
Yeah, I've especially after the international break, right? It was a unique year, a unique experience this time around. How they did it, and but yeah, obviously the biggest thing is seeing the rest of the scores. If we go around the league, right, we see in Cincinnati versus Philly. I mean, we all knew that was going to be a tough one. Cincinnati ended up winning 1-0. They're obviously into the Eastern Conference Final, and then obviously and then Columbus beat Orlando 2-0. And on the other side, the Houston Dynamo and SKC. That one, was it a handball? Was it not a handball? I know a lot of people have thoughts on the refereeing. When I saw that replay, I don't know how you don't call it a handball. I don't know what happened there. But shout out to SKC, man. What they've been through, they hopped in as a wild card team, and they were one game away from being in the conference final, which is just insane. So it just goes to show that the wild card game is exciting. It could get you all the way, pretty much all the way through. But like the refing, I know they're gonna feel bad about that refing. What were your thoughts on that call?
Yeah, look, I mean, it is as difficult a way to go out as I can probably think of for SKC. But yeah, I think there's been a lot of focus on the refereeing in these conference semifinals, maybe a little bit too much. I think, the Cincy example is not a clear and obvious error because we simply don't have the angles. The angle that we were given is way off centered, and you just can't tell. LAFC, I think there was a little bit too much criticism. Maybe we'll get into that with Ted Uncle. And then the Houston one is the only one where I believe there is a serious debate here to be had, whether that was a penalty because it clearly and obviously hits his hand. But the argument becomes, is his arm making his body unnaturally bigger? I think he probably is by sticking it out slightly, but I think there's an argument to be made that his arms just at his side. So I completely understand where SKC fans feel hard done by. I would have given a penalty should I have been the VAR, but yeah, I think it's a difficult one there. But yeah, certainly the most egregious error, if it was one, was in the Houston SKC game.
And yeah, and that one being inside the box too doesn't make it any easier, right? Because that could just change things. All right, you would assume that that would be called a penalty. SKC gets an opportunity to potentially tie it, and then you kind of go from there.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think the two biggest surprises has been those two teams this year to make it this far, right? SKC and the Houston Dynamo. And I think also seeing you know what Hector Herrera and the Dynamo have done this season. They won the Open Cup. Obviously, we know they beat Miami without Messi, but they still got a trophy this year. So they will be going to the CONCACAF Champions League next year. But also to make it to the Western Conference Final, I don't think anybody believed or thought that Houston would be one of the final four teams making it, which I think it's very impressive. What have you seen from the Houston Dynamo this season that's kind of stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's Hector Herrera, Ache. He has been uh, just sensational in every way, in all over the park, offensively, defensively. He is running the game for them, and I think he probably didn't get enough consideration for that MVP talk because there was just so much focus on Luciano Acosta and Denny Bawanga, mainly Luciano Acosta, and fair enough, deservedly so. But I think, if you're looking at who are the most valuable players to their individual teams, I think you're talking about Denny Bouanga and Hector Herrera because you remove those players and they're completely different teams. And I think you got to give credit to Ben Olsen for getting the best out of Hector Herrera. He wasn't very good last year. He wasn't what Houston fans expected, and he wasn't worth the DP money. But now he is, as we just said, one of the better players in the league. So it is a really important year for him. And in the same way, they have Amin Bassi, who came in and has had a fantastic year, a lot of penalties, but he's also been facilitating things from that number 10. Corey Barrett has had the best season statistically of his MLS career, right? Longtime veteran, but he has really picked it up. There's a lot of different contributors in that team, and I think it's well balanced, it's well coached, and it's not a team that you want to face, obviously, in a playoff tournament format, because they already won the U.S. Open Cup. They know exactly how to win these type of games, and not to mention they beat LAFC in back-to-back games with a 5-0 aggregate in the regular season. So it is not a team that should be taken lightly for sure, and not one that LAFC has matched up with well either.
Look, that is a very, very interesting note that you bring up, because I think any team that makes it this far, any team can win, right? We know LAFC has been on a roll, but like, even though LAFC is hosting, they can get beat by the Houston Dynamo. And just to go back to Hector Herrera, yeah, he has played so much better. We see sometimes when players obviously, like, that played in the Mexican national team, they'll come to the MLS. I would say outside of Carlos Vela, there really hasn't been one that's really stood out, and done and has been as successful as Carlos Vela. But I think now Hector Herrera has reached that mark, right? Like, it's different. Obviously, Carlos Vela has won an MLS Cup, but winning an Open Cup and now producing for your team, right? Hector Herrera is more of the facilitator, right? If we look at his stats right here, I'm looking right now, in 34 matches, he has 5 goals and 13 assists. I mean, that's pretty good. And to be able to help your team get to the Final Four, already win the Open Cup, and completely change a Houston Dynamo team that for the number of years they've been a laughable team. Like, whenever you played the Houston Dynamo for the last number of years, you can almost scribble in a W that the team is very beatable. And now Hector Herrera, you mentioned Ben Olsen, and then the rest of the gang, they've changed that this season, and that say they make it to the final, or they somehow beat LAFC, that's gonna completely change. It's already changing the dynamic of who the Houston Dynamo are, but also that can attract more players to come play, more DP players. Now there's rumors that there's potentially going to be a 4th DP next season. It also makes the Western Conference a little bit more tough. And I think that's what you want to see when you have a player of the caliber of Hector Herrera, who once played at Atletico Madrid and now is coming here and is giving that type of performance on a consistent basis this year. That's what you want to see at DPs when they come to the MLS, especially ones that used to play for the Mexican national team. Now, I know someone had mentioned, do you think the Mexican national team should call him up? I'm like, I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we're there to have that conversation. That's a whole other conversation. But I like seeing him perform and what he's doing in MLS.
Yeah, I think there's no criticism can be levied. It's an interesting discussion about the Mexican national team for sure. But yeah, I think the last piece as well is of a DP is you want him to put butts in seats, and he's been doing that as well, right? Houston drawing fans again, and that playoff atmosphere was absolutely rocking in their final home game of the season. So yeah, it really is great to see, and I hope it can continue in Houston, because they have a passionate fan base when they're winning.
Yeah. I know you had tweeted this. Obviously, we knew Lucho Acosta was one MVP. We knew Denny Bouanga, I think he tweeted this, finished second. I believe you tweeted out the stats. What stood out to you in the stat graphic? Let me see if I can pull it up. What you tweeted out.
Yeah, with the final voting for MVP you're talking about, it was I think it was surprisingly a landslide to Lucho Acosta. We all expected Lucho Acosta to win, and maybe by a margin, but to see like 4% or something in the media vote for Denny Bouanga is just ridiculous. It just doesn't give him the credit he deserves, in my opinion, because he was just as good as Lucho Acosta, more important to his team, in my opinion. He would have gotten my vote for MVP. And I think that, he just deserves a little bit more focus. But you know what? That is what it is. These MVP votes come down to, you got to pick one player. And I think that when the entire media is telling you for the past, 3 months that it's going to be Lucho Acosta, it becomes pretty easy for the entire media to vote for him. And then, you see the player vote as well is pretty heavily skewed in favor of Luciano Acosta, which is, an interesting one, considering Denny Bouanga probably scored against all those people that voted against him.
Yeah, no, look, and the thing about Danny Bouanga, he's been consistent in all competitions. Obviously, the MLS MVP
Hmm.
only focuses on the MVP during the MLS regular season. But I think both have been very spectacular. And yeah, like I mean, you see right there the player, the media vote, the club vote, everything. I think the thing that stood out to me is just like also like Cincinnati, like they've also like within the last year they switched also what they are as a club. Now they're a winning club this season. Now they're performing. And a lot of it has to do that to Luciano Costa and how they've been performing. I think as great Danny Bouanga has been for what Luciano Costa has done for Cincy, I think it's just stood out a little bit more in the MLS. But we see Danny Bouanga every single week, and we see and the things that he's doing, even scoring the goals. You're like, it shouldn't be that far, right? It shouldn't the voting shouldn't be that far off when we see him day in day out and being clutch and all that. And it will be interesting if LAFC make it to the final and then Cincy make it interesting. And then I know Danny Bouanga probably has a chip on his shoulder, and we're like, this is who the real MVP should be if LAFC are to make it that far. That would that would be exciting because there is also an MVP that you can win in the MLS Cup final.
Hmm.
But I don't want to
Hmm.
get too ahead of myself. But yeah, I just thought the voting it was interesting how far off because I think you and I know you had mentioned that you thought Bouanga was MVP, and I know a lot of people else also thought that, but I was just surprised how the margin was so big. Let's talk a little bit
Hmm.
about the Sounders versus LAFC game because that was a big game. LAFC finally beat the Sounders in the playoffs. We know it's been a number of opportunities now that LAFC hasn't been able to get over the Sounders. What did you think going into this game for LAFC?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that they were definitely going to play a style that wasn't going to be pretty, but I didn't think it was going to be quite as defensive as what they brought out. I think before the goal, LAFC was trying to create. They were moving forward. They were fluid a little bit. But I think that once that goal went in, it was just a revert into a shell type of game. Get into halftime, and then after halftime, there wasn't any type of, we're going to try and open up this game for the first, 20 minutes. We're going to try and, not sit in our defensive shell for the first 20 minutes or 30 minutes of that second half, because generally the idea is you can't do that for 45 minutes. You can't do it for 90 minutes, but LAFC did do it for 90 minutes. And I think, there's a lot of things we can point to. Defending crosses, for one, in my opinion, was fantastic. Seattle have been one of the most dangerous teams off crosses, but they limited the way that Seattle crossed. Steve Cherundolo was talking about, as long as you don't allow them to cross the ball on the ground, cut back towards the penalty spot, towards the top of the box, you force them to play aerial balls, aerial crosses, and then you just crowd the box. You got to have enough men in there to go and win the ball. And that's what LAFC did with Murillo, Chiellini. I mean, you look at the defensive actions of all four of those defenders, they were off the charts because they were just doing whatever it took to keep the ball out of the net. And then, of course, there's Maxime Crepeau in goal, just making save after save. The first one on Jordan Morris is it's sensational, right? I mean, that is a winning save. Ryan Hollingshead said he told Maxime Crepeau that the moment he made that save, he thought in his head, we're winning this game. It's over. Because that type of save, it just completely changes momentum. It completely changes mindset. And it absolutely changed the game. And then, he had a couple fingertip saves, one that was really special in the final, 10 or 20 minutes of that game. So he was absolutely locked in for me. I love watching Max in these type of games because he just loves being in these big moments. He loves the intensity. He loves the pressure. And he, hasn't been able to experience it all season. So he's right back into it in these big moments. It's really great to see for him.
Yeah, no, I mean, talking about Max, I think it was like the first 5 minutes when he had those big saves. I think it was like the third or fourth minute when he had that save against Jordan Morris. And when you looked at typically, I mean, 9 out of 10 times Jordan Morris is going to score that. And when I saw him get that save, I was like, oh wow, this is insane. And also, it's been more than a year and almost a month since Maxime Campo injured himself in the MLS Cup final, and it's good to see him to be in his rhythm. and be making these saves, because that's what LAFC needs. They're going to need everybody to step up. You need Max to have a game like how he did this last game, and also you need the defense to grow into this game, because I don't know if it was Murillo who got beat on that. I think on the run of play of Jordan Morris, but in the first half it was a little. Let's put it this way: Seattle was knocking on the door, and the defense wasn't as strong. And I feel like the defense grew into the game going into the second half, where they made it really, really tough on the Seattle Sounders players. Yeah, they had a couple of shots, but I think what we've seen from Maxime Capo and what we've seen from that defense as a whole was I think maybe it could be one of the best performances that I've seen from LAFC, like as a whole defensively, and how they played it, and also being on the road, also playing on the turf, being in Seattle with all the things in hand and trying to get this revenge game, right? I thought it was just an excellent performance, because a lot of people weren't sure if LAFC was going to beat Seattle, right? From history, right? We weren't sure what was going to happen from the previous seasons. And now that they got this win, I think they got to carry this momentum, and they got to feel confident that, like, hey, we just slayed one of our biggest, competitors, our biggest menaces in this last game. Now let's carry that momentum against Houston and potentially the game moving forward. And I think that's what's going to be very interesting. If the defense can do that, and you have another performance like you did from Max, you assume that Bouanga is going to do what he's do, Vela's going to do what he's do, and then all else, it's in their hands now. It's essentially in their hands.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Coming home, obviously, against Houston, it's going to be a completely different game. But yeah, as you say, it's important to be able to win in different ways. You might need to play a similar way should you go to Cincinnati, for example, who's a team who absolutely loves to have the ball. And you might be fine with that and want to counterattack against them. So I think, yes, it shows. Steve Cherundolo has always talked about he wants to play in phases. There wasn't really phases in that game, but it was just a different type of team, right? It's not the type of team that we would see under Bob Bradley ever, but now we see it. And I think, it really is interesting when you talk about the Seattle aspect as well, because they have not been able to beat Seattle in the playoffs, 3-1 losses, right? And just crazy to think about, before that game, Edward Atuesta was the only player to score against Seattle in the playoffs for LAFC up until now. So it really is just, it's been difficult, and Seattle have been that dominant club for the past decade, but it really feels like the torch has been passed to LAFC as MLS's most feared club, because an MLS Cup, 2 Supporters Shield, and now 3 Western Conference final appearances within 6 years of existence is just incredible. It's a dominance that I think, really speaks for itself.
Yeah, I know you want to talk a little bit about the Denny Bouanga's goal against the Seattle Sounders. I'm gonna bring this up here, and you can walk us through it, because I mean it was sensational. Just seeing how he got the pass and then just scored. He had one thing on his mind. Here, let me go ahead and play this.
Yeah, absolutely, Gio, because I think people don't understand. I think people don't appreciate how good of a goal this was. This was a really special tactical move from LAFC, from back to front. You see Ryan Hollingshead pick up the ball, and he immediately is looking to play forward. Tillman picks up that pocket. He turns and looks for Kike Oliveira. This is where I think it really is impressive from LAFC, because you see that Alex Roldan continually pushes up as a right fullback for Seattle in possession. He gets caught too high sometimes, and Denny Bouanga knows that. He sees that he can exploit that space, and Kike Oliveira knows that as well. So Kike Oliveira knows that Yeimar is responsible for covering that right space if Alex Roldan is out of position. And you see that when Tillman gets the ball, Kike pulls Yeimar and says, okay, I'm going to come in, pull Yeimar, and leave the ball for Denny. Now Yeimar is completely taken out of the play. Now Kike decides, okay, I'm going to go to the center penalty spot and make my run there. Jackson Reagan now cannot go and close down Denny Bouanga because he has to stay put on Kike Oliveira. There, Denny Bouanga has the space to run in, cannot be caught by Roldan or Yeimar because they were taken out of the play earlier. So it is not only fantastic play from Hollingshead and Tillman, but I think Kike Oliveira just pulling both those center backs exactly where they needed to be on the play. Fantastic tactical work from LAFC.
Yeah, and I think that the biggest thing too, also seeing that play in the goal, is Kike Oliveira and Bouanga are understanding each other, right? because we've seen I'm forgetting the number 9 that hasn't performed for LAFC.
Mario. Mario.
He understands how they're going to play with each other, and he already knew Buongo's right behind him. He already knew that what you just talked about, being able to pull that defender. What that's when you those the plays in training and everything. You know when, like, okay, I know one, Buongo has the pace to reach the ball, and if I pull this defender, that's going to open it up for him. And also understanding, like you mentioned, the run. If I make this run, I'm gonna pull my defender a little bit more and give Buongo, who has the pace, who has that open room, to score, to have the ability to score this goal. And Tillman also seeing, noticing the pass and everything right then and there. And Buonga is going to do what Buonga does, right? We've seen him, sometimes he tends to do a little bit too much, but that was he had one thing on his mind. He saw how much space he had, and he's like, I'm gonna go for goal. And I think that's what you like to see from your team collectively, and from Buonga, who's been consistent since day one all the way throughout this MLS Cup playoffs. That he's been the guy to lead on. At times you kind of felt like maybe you needed a couple of LAFC players to step up a little bit more. But at a game like this, it's impressive that you can still win 1-0 and do what you do on the defensive end. And I think moving forward, the next game may have to be another one goal difference type of game, right? One goal can definitely win it. If they play Houston and if they move on, because these teams are going to be very, very difficult. And I'm loving what I'm seeing from this team. I'm loving what I'm seeing from Bonga. I'm loving what I'm seeing from Vela. I'm loving for the team collectively, because they've had some up and downs, right, this season. And even though they played, I forget how many games they played this season, it looks like they don't look tired to me anymore. They look very, very motivated, and they know they haven't won a trophy this year, and they know they're 2 wins away from winning a trophy. And I think that's the added motivation that they want to do, because they win that trophy, you can kind of forget about everything else, right? You can kind of forget about what happened this season, but if you repeat as back-to-back league champs, that can kind of just one. I don't know if it's salvaging, but ripping off the band-aid doesn't hurt as much, because one, you're back-to-back MLS champs, and you go to the CONCACAF Champions League for the next year.
No, I think it's completely fair. They know that they've missed out on some opportunities. Hollingshead's talked about it. Sanchez, Murillo, they've all talked about how they know they missed out on some chances for trophies, and they need to make sure that they capitalize on this opportunity here, because yeah, it's a big one for them, and going back to back would be absolutely massive for them. So it's gonna be fun. Sure is.
Yeah. What would you like to see? Obviously, LAFC is at home this Saturday. What's one player that you would like to see step up, or you like to see a little bit more of, that we've seen like Chiqui Palacios had I think a great tackle. We've seen Max. Well, what's one player, either that's starting or off the bench, that you think could impact this next game?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one, because you can't really say anybody after the Seattle game, right? They were all so good. But I think when you're looking at a Houston team, you're gonna see a slightly different game. You're probably gonna see more pressing from LAFC, and so for that reason, I would say maybe a Mateus Bogusz can transition more quickly in midfield. Though, he may come off the bench as well, because that midfield battle against Houston is really going to be one to watch, and I think probably where the game is won. So it'll be interesting to see who Cherundolo starts, but I think if you want to talk about Mateus Bogusz, he's going to need to add that pressing ability, that winning the ball in the final third, along with Tillman, and then that transition to creating more than maybe somebody like Kellen Acosta can going forward. So maybe him, if LAFC decide to play a little bit more of an open game at home, which you would probably expect. So that's one I would look at. But as I said, I mean, everybody put in a shift, against Seattle. I think that literally everybody on the pitch had a very, very quality performance, and was very involved and important in the way that LAFC wanted to play that game. So hard to say that anybody has to step up their game from that Seattle game.
No, and that's fair, and that's fair. And I think for me, I really like what I saw from Kike, and I really
Hmm.
liked, and I really feel like he could definitely have an impact and score a goal. and be the difference maker, because he makes those runs, and he has the speed, and he's understanding these guys. He's understanding what his role, what he needs to do, right? Whether it's making a deeper run, whether it's making it difficult on the defense. And I think, and I think it's good to see that, typically, right, we've had a lot of older wiles come play for LAFC, and it's good that you have a player like Kike who understands his role and what he needs to do, and potentially he could potentially be that guy next season that's scoring those goals and helping Denny Bouanga this next season, because right now it's like, obviously it's Denny's Bouanga show with the offense and getting the distribution, but I think he can have a game where, whether he makes an important assist, or breaks down a defender, or scores an important goal. And I think he could definitely be the difference maker for this next game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, he's not going to get on the stat sheet. Tillman's getting that assist, but Kike, to me, was even more vital to that goal, as we talked about. So yeah, I think it's a great point. And he was a game time decision for that Seattle game, and he nearly played the whole time. So it just shows the energy, the passion that he has to go and help his team and win the game. Because yeah, he could have just not played that game, but the coaching staff put their faith in him, said, all right, if you feel good enough, we're going to put you in. And he made the difference.
Yeah. All right, guys. So that's pretty much it. So Saturday, December 2nd at 6:30, LAFC is hosting the Houston Dynamo for the Western Conference Finals. And if everything goes well, then LAFC will be back defending their MLS Cup Championship. Now, so it's the team. It was going to be hosted in Ohio, right?
In Ohio,
regardless, yep. Because it's whether Cincinnati or Columbus wins, right? They got the higher seed. So if LAFC wins, they'll be on the way to Ohio.
They absolutely will be, and as will we, Gio.
All right. That's what I'm thinking, man. I'm considering. I'm like, man, it's so cold out there. It is so cold out there right now. But
Tell me about it.
If they make it, yeah, we definitely got to go out there and cover that game, because, man, last year's final was insane. And then, I mean, if they make it, how could we not go to the final?
Oh yeah, of course. When you have the potential MVP battle that you were foreshadowing.
The MVP battle, yeah. Well, that's it, guys. Thank you guys for hopping on and listening to us. That wraps today's show. So for Justin, this is Gio. We'll catch you guys next time. Bye, everybody.